Alright, hi everyone, welcome to another episode of PSN, the Petro Sports Network. I'm Petros Masha. Today we're going to talk about, this is not a rise and fall series, but we're going to talk about a play that forever changed the game in the city of Seattle, and it's the play that is called the play that saved baseball in Seattle. And Seattle Mariners right now, they're not really doing too well as we speak, but they're slowly getting better now. They signed Robinson Cano last off season, and then with Felix Hernandez. But when they were originally founded, and I'm going to say a brief history like I do all the time, but they went into the league in 1977, the same year the second Canadian team, the Toronto Blue Jays, entered. And for their first 18 years, they only had 2 winning seasons. They weren't really that good. And on top of that, they played in a cavernous stadium called the Kingdome, and it was a multi-purpose stadium because it was also the home of the Seattle Seahawks of the National Football League. The problem was the Kingdome had a similar resemblance to that of Olympic Stadium, not because it looked like a toilet bowl, but because the stadium, the roof of the stadium had collapsed, and it forced the Seattle Mariners, I forget what year it was, they had to play a couple of their games on the road, similar to what the Expos had to do when part of the roof of the Olympic Stadium collapsed. Anyway, as the first 18 years, things weren't going so great for the Seattle Mariners. The next thing you know, there were rumors that they were going to relocate because they weren't getting people and there was a lack of fan interest. But 1995, the year after the strike that killed baseball in Montreal, ended up being Seattle's gain. Because the Seattle Mariners, they had a sluggish start in 95, but then as the season progressed, they suddenly caught on fire and somehow managed to stay neck and neck battle with the California Angels. They're now the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, but back in the day, they were the California Angels. The California Angels collapsed in that year, and at the end of the 162 game schedule, the Seattle Mariners and the California Angels were tied for first in the American League West. And if two teams are tied, because the thing is, there was the wild card. This was the first year wild card was there in '95. The thing is, New York Yankees had the wild card because the Boston Red Sox won the AL East, and the Yankees had the best second place team. Now with things changing, anyway, so they played the 163rd game, which was the tiebreaker. Whoever won that game went to the playoffs. And that year, in '95, the California Angels and Seattle Mariners, it ended up going in favor of the Seattle Mariners. They won the game thanks to a brilliant performance by Randy Johnson. We remember Randy Johnson from his days when he won the World Series in Arizona in '01 and then in his later career. But beforehand, he was originally drafted by the Montreal Expos, and he wasn't good enough for Montreal, and he was traded to Seattle and ended up becoming one of the marquee pitchers of the '90s for Seattle and then Arizona, and the list goes on eventually with New York. Anyway, so after he pitched beautifully, the Mariners ended up playing the New York Yankees in '95 in the first round of the divisional series. It was the first time since 1981 that they had a divisional series, because back then you only had the NL East and the NL West, and the American League East and the American League West, and whoever finished first place would play each other in the championship series before going to the World Series. 1981 was an exception where they had a divisional series because there was a labor dispute, a strike, and that strike caused the first half, whoever was leading in the first half of the season before the strike would make the playoffs, and the second half winner would make it when the strike finished. And that's how the Montreal Expos made the playoffs in 1981, because they led the National League East for the second half of the year. The first half was Philadelphia. That's why those two teams met. Anyway, now back in Seattle, the '95 playoffs was a historic moment because it was Don Mattingly's first playoff appearance, and it was, as I'm getting there, it was going to be his only playoff appearance that he would make with the New York Yankees in his illustrious 14-year career. The New York Yankees are up 2-1 and are very close of moving on to the next round, either to face their hated rivals, the Boston Red Sox, or the Cleveland Indians. But the Seattle Mariners stormed back, and the Yankees were up 6-4 in Game 4. But the Mariners clawed their way back and ended up forcing Game 5 at the Kingdome. And Game 5 will always be remembered for, as the game went on, for the play that saved baseball in Seattle, because the game is tied in the later innings, and Mariners in the '95 year, They were rumored to relocate, as I said, but that team had players like, as I said, Randy Johnson. They had Joey Cora at shortstop. You had Edgar Martinez, and Edgar Martinez was considered to be one of the best designated hitters to play in baseball. Jay Buhner, who was best remembered for that Seinfeld episode where when George Steinbrenner tells Frank Costanza that George is dead, Frank goes, "What are you, Jay Buhner, for? You had 40 home runs and 100 RBI, and then accounted for an arm. You know what the hell are you doing?" They showed that clip when he was honored in the Hall of Fame. And, of course, the one and only Ken Griffey Jr. And Ken Griffey Jr., we remember him from his days in Cincinnati, where it was injury plagued, but beforehand he was one of the best young players to play in the game for the Seattle Mariners. And he was like Ricky Henderson, in which he can hit and he can fly, and meaning he can run. Anyway, he's on at first, and Joey Cora is at second. The Yankees have a lead. Next thing you know, Edgar Martinez on a 2-2 pitch hits the ball. He hits it to the left field side, and the call from the late Dave Newhouse, may he rest in peace, because he was a terrific commentator. And the call, I remember he making it. Well, I saw the highlights of it, but he went like, and the 2-2 pitch all the way to Edgar Martinez, swung down line field line for a base hit. Here comes Joey. Here comes Joey to the plate. They're gonna wipe him in. The throw to the plate will be late. The Mariners are gonna play for the American League Championship. It just continues. My, oh my. Edgar Martinez with a double ripped down the left field line, and they're going crazy at the Kingdom. Anyway, that play, even though the Seattle Mariners ended up losing to the Cleveland Indians in the championship series, the Cleveland Indians ended up losing to the Atlanta Braves, who were the team of the 90s, because they had made to the World Series almost every year. But the Seattle Mariners, it ended up renewing fan interest in going to the games, because the Kingdom wasn't really suitable, and the taxpayers they found a way, the government of Seattle and the city, to build a stadium that was specifically made for baseball. And it ended up happening after 4 years later. The Seattle Mariners ended up moving to Safeco Field, and they've been playing there ever since. And the Mariners, after that time, have had very competitive teams. Even though Ken Griffey Jr. left because he wanted to leave in after the '99 season, he was still loved in Seattle after he made his return in '07. They gave him a standing ovation, and they actually called Safeco Field the home that Ken Griffey Jr. built. And on top of that, the Seattle Mariners ended up in 2001 having the best record in all of baseball, winning a record 116 games, led with the likes of Ichiro Suzuki, who's now with the New York Yankees with his incredible hitting and base stealing. And they had Mike Cameron, who was there. Even though they came up short, they were still competitive. And now, obviously, they're a bit in the crapper right now, but they're slowly getting back there. But as I said, if Ken Griffey Jr. and company didn't take care of business and not win, the Seattle Mariners would probably not be there. And it even inspired, we're going to hear it right now, the game for the Super Nintendo called Ken Griffey Jr.'s Winning Run. We're going to play the main theme right now, as you can hear. Just turn it up. I'm going to listen in for a bit, because this theme wants to get you into baseball. Here's the best part of the song. And there we go. That wraps another episode of PSN. I'm Petrosmasher saying so long. Be sure to watch my blog, to read my blogs on petrosmashersports.blogspot.com. I'm gonna be making a new video coming up very shortly on comparisons between Pavel Bure and Eric Lindros, and why one is in the Hall of Fame and why one isn't. Until then, so long. See you again next time.